Chapter 1. The back roads added 90 minutes to the drive. Daniel Park took them anyway. He'd calculated the extra time on his phone before leaving Louisville, staring at the straight shot of the interstate versus the gray tangle of county routes through LaRue County. The highway was faster. 4 lanes of headlights punching through the dark, and he hadn't driven at night in 3 years. Not since that night. So he took 31 East, south through Hodgenville, past the Abraham Lincoln birthplace sign, past the Baptist church marquee that read, "God knows what you did last summer," and turned west onto a road so narrow the trees clawed both sides of his car. Sweet decay rising off the creek bottoms where sycamore leaves piled in wet drifts. That was October in Kentucky. The road dipped through a holler so deep the sky disappeared. Nothing but oak canopy and fog pooling in the low spots. His headlights caught an opossum at the road's edge, and he braked so hard the seatbelt locked across his chest. The animal stared back at him. Flat eyes. No fear. It shuffled into the brush, and Daniel sat there, hands white on the wheel, his heart hammering for a full minute before he could move. An animal on the road at night. That was all. The cabin materialized at the end of a gravel drive that climbed a ridge above the surrounding hollow. Weathered plank siding. The rental listing had called it a writer's retreat with rustic charm, which was Kentucky real estate for no cell signal, and your nearest neighbor was a quarter mile through woods. He killed the engine. The silence was physical. Crickets, the tick of the cooling engine, and somewhere in the dark, an owl calling. 1 bar on his phone. He dialed before he lost it. Matthew Hale picked up on the 3rd ring. "Tell me you're writing." Matthew had stopped pretending to care about Daniel as a human being 18 months ago, when the advance money ran out and the pages didn't appear. "Just got here. The cabins. 6 weeks. Pemberton wants pages or the full advance back. You hear me?" He heard. $38,000 already gone. Rent, his mother's care facility, the loans he'd promised to help Sabrina with and then hadn't. Every cent of the money was spent. "I'll have something." "You've been saying that for over a year. This time, 6 weeks. The line went dead. Daniel hauled himself out into the cold. The air was sharper up here on the ridge, thinner, carrying the mineral smell of the lake somewhere east and wood smoke from a chimney he couldn't see. He thought he'd have his life more together by now. 3 months away from turning 40, and he couldn't even finish a paragraph. He grabbed his belongings from the car, which included a box of research books he'd use for avoidance, and he knew it. The key was under a ceramic frog by the door, exactly where Boyd had promised. A man who'd described the cabin as quiet enough to hear your own thoughts, if you can stand what they're saying. Daniel had laughed on the phone. Standing on the porch now, he didn't. The porch light caught a fresh scuff on the boards near the threshold. Half a boot print. Toe pointed at the door. Someone coming in, not going out. Probably Boyd, stalking the place. Inside, he was overwhelmed by the scent of pine cleaner and the mustiness of a house that spent more time empty than occupied. A kitchen with appliances from the previous decade. Stone fireplace, a couch that had survived more than one tenant's breakdown, and a desk positioned beneath a window that faced the tree line. Beyond the glass, invisible in the dark, the gravel drive dropped back down toward the road. He unpacked, laptop on the desk, phone charger in the wall, then located and tested the coffee maker. The ritual of settling in, all those small organizational tasks that manufactured the illusion of control. He powered up the laptop. The cursor blinked on the last sentence he'd written 4 months ago, one he'd rewritten 36 times and still hated. The novel was supposed to be about grief, a man confronting the worst thing he'd ever done. His editor had called the concept searing. He closed the laptop. A narrow staircase led to the attic. He told himself he was exploring, building a relationship with the space so he could write settings with the specificity his readers expected. He told himself a lot of things. The attic's ceiling hung low. It stored the day's warmth long after the rest of the cabin had gone cold. He looked around. Boxes stacked against the walls, a crate of old paperback westerns. On a shelf near the only window, a pair of brass binoculars sat under a film of dust, tarnished green at the hinges. He picked them up, heavier than they looked. Solid brass, cold through the dust. The lenses were cloudy but intact. He tucked them under his arm. Behind the boxes, shoved against the far wall, where the roof sloped down low enough that he had to crouch, he found a journal. Leather-bound, dark cover, cracked at the spine, the leather worn soft in places where hands had gripped it for years. He opened it, standing there in the attic heat. The pages were blank. He fanned through, expecting diary entries. He found nothing but cream-colored paper, thick and smooth, with a texture that matched nothing manufactured recently. Daniel ran a thumb across the top sheet. No yellowing at the edges, no crackle of age. The pages were too heavy, almost warm against his fingers. On the flyleaf, embossed in letters so faint he had to angle the page toward the bare bulb, written in Malice. The title, or a warning. He couldn't tell which. He carried both downstairs, placed the journal and binoculars next to the laptop, the two of them sitting there side by side. He made coffee, drank half standing at the window, looking out at the massive trees, the gravel drive swallowed by fog. The cabin sat high enough on the ridge he could almost see the road below, the one that snaked toward Hodgenville. A single pair of headlights moved along it, distant and slow, maybe a mile off. He picked the binoculars up, pressed them to his eyes. The headlights sharpened, cutting through the fog in twin beams that swept the curve and vanished past the tree line. His hands tightened on the brass. His throat closed, his pulse kicked, watching a car on a dark road at night, and his whole body treating it like a threat. He set the binoculars down and ran his hand through his short black hair. He needed to get that image out of his mind. The desk lamp threw warm light across the journal's cover. He sat, opened to the first blank page, uncapped his pen. The ink sank into the paper fast, absorbed before it could smear. The line he wrote came out cleaner than expected, and the next followed without much input from him, the way writing used to feel, before everything seized up. He tried to redirect it once, near the start. Wrote his protagonist's name at the top of a clean line. The parking garage. The first sentence of the novel he'd been failing to write for 14 months. The pen caught. The ink came out thin and gray and reluctant, as if the paper itself were turning away from it. He tried twice more. Same resistance. He tried a single word, safe, as a test. Wrote it alone at the center of the line. The pen barely touched the paper before the ink went dry, as if the page had closed over it. He wrote about the drive, the fog, the sound of the creek at the bottom of the hollow. The ink ran full and black and absorbed before it could smear. 20 minutes. Descriptions of the drive, the fog, the cabin. Nothing important. Warming up. Loosening rust from a machine that hadn't run in months. The words came easier than they had on the laptop. Easier than they'd come anywhere in over a year. He put the pen down, read back what he'd written. His handwriting, his voice, the relief of writing again. That was all. He closed the journal. Went to bed in the cold back bedroom, quilt pulled to his chin, the house settling around him like breathing. At midnight, he got up, crossed the dark cabin to the window, picked up the binoculars, scanned the road below for headlights, for brake lights, for any sign of movement on the curves where the fog sat thickest. No one. The road lay empty, black and still. He swept the binoculars sideways across the tree line at the edge of the yard. Halfway across, a pinprick of light caught the lens. Stationary, a few feet off the ground, tucked into the dark space between two trunks. He held there, refocused. The point flared once and went out. Moonlight off a can some hunter had wedged in a fork and forgotten about, probably. He lowered the binoculars. 30 minutes he'd been standing there. His feet were numb on the cold floor. Back at the desk, the journal was open. He'd closed it. He was sure he'd closed it. 7 pages of his handwriting. He'd written 7 pages. At the bottom of the last one, in a hand that was almost but not quite his own, a line he didn't remember writing. You can keep pretending. The pages know better. Daniel stood over the desk for a long time. He closed the journal and this time put the binoculars on top of it, like a paperweight, like something that could hold it shut.